So you're still not quite sure about how covenant swapping works? Well, we're going through it today. Covenants, one of the biggest deals in the Shadowlands, but a lot of weird stuff going on the forums about exactly how this works. How does swapping work? How do you even choose a covenant? What is the process that you're going to go through? So it's worth looking at it as we have some new information in this latest beta build as to how you're going to be able to use this system, and if you do want to change, how that's going to work. So let's get started with it. Firstly, you have a linear leveling experience in the Shadowlands on your first character. You don't have to do it on alts. But for your very first one, you're going to go from Bastion, then you're going to go to Maldraxxus, then to Ardenweald, and then you're going to finish up with the Venthyr. You're going to go through all their stories. You're going to set them up so they can start fighting back against the Jailer, all that wonderful stuff. And then, once you're ready, once you've finished the Venthyr story campaign, and this is crucial, guys, doesn't matter when you cap in the Shadowlands. We do have a video coming up on how long it actually takes to level, because they've been messing around with it quite a lot. It doesn't matter when you cap, you need to finish the campaign. They want to ensure you've tested your Covenant ability, you've tested out your Covenant signature ability before you make this choice. They really want you to find that out. However, if you are concerned about your performance effect coming from the Covenant choice, the leveling process does not introduce you to the Soulbind system. That comes later. So you will need to research that beforehand. We will have as much information as we can. They keep chopping and changing it. But the Soulbinds, the actual things that you get to slot conduits in and all the little passive traits, you will not get to see them while leveling. So really important that you do your homework way before you make this decision if one of your Soulbinds is actually of big importance. And there are still some, although they've nerfed them heavily to try and balance them out. They've been squashing the Soulbinds down. There are still definitely some which carry major implications for how your character is played, particularly for healers. Something you want to watch out for. So once you finish your Venthyr campaign, you're going to be sent to Oribos, which is our brand new capital city, where you're going to be told to choose a covenant. There's no setup for this. It's something that's been a big controversy on the forums and here, is that there's no warning for this to happen. It's like, okay, choose commit yourself now. And I imagine that is because they are totally in position to maybe remove this. So they haven't tied the story to it. They haven't done something which is like, it's crucially important you choose a covenant. So it just says, okay, now you need to choose a covenant. Now this is where it gets pretty cool, because depending on how quickly you leveled, some people take over a month to level. Some people will do it in a single night. It might have been ages since you last used your covenant stuff. So Bastion that you start in, you might not have used that for weeks, potentially. So what they're going to do is temporarily grant you those abilities before you make a choice. Once it says choose a covenant, they're going to ask you to speak to all 4 of the emissaries of each of the covenants, and you will have several options there. One of the options is, can I have the abilities again so I can test them out and play around with them? So you could do that at level 60. You could do that when you're capped. If you want to throw into some BGs and see how these spells work in PvP, do some arenas, all that kind of stuff, you can mess around with these spells during that point. You temporarily are granted them. And swapping them around is as easily as going to the next emissary and saying, hey, can I test your abilities now? Go over to the next one. Can I test yours now? Really very simple, very cool. What they're also going to do is give you a window to remind you of the other cosmetic bonuses that you're going to get. So it's going to show you the initial transmog that you're going to get. It's going to show you the mount you get with it, and a little bit of a brief on what the story is, because you might have forgotten, or you might not have read it because you were trying to speed level, although you are interested. They're going to give you a little brief, a little synopsis of what is going on with that covenant and why you might be interested in going with them. So if you're more interested in that, please check out our videos on the individual covenants, because some major lore characters that you might very well be interested in, like Uther, Kael'thas, Kel'Thuzad, all these guys are Covenant-specific storylines. They overlap a little bit here and there, but for the most part, their story is contained to one of the Covenants. Blizzard really does want you to have at least 4 characters over the course of the Shadowlands. So at that point, you've tried everything. You've done it, right? You're confident at that time what you want to choose. Choosing is really simple. Once you've spoken to all 4 of the emissaries, you can then go to the table, you'll be presented with a screen, choose your covenant, and that's it. Once you've done it, you're locked in. That's the way it goes. Now you need to go back to the emissary for the covenant you've chosen. They're going to give you a quest to return to your covenant sanctum, where you're going to begin your campaign of earning renown, which is a weekly a weekly reputation essentially, but it is weekly capped. That's why it's not a reputation bar. You can only gain 3 per week, but there will be a catch-up system should you choose to change Covenant. So don't worry about it too much. You only need to get 3 of these per week to be at the cutting edge of your character. Having alts in the Shadowlands is really very easy, based on the systems we have right now. They might change that, but based on what we've got right now, maintaining alts at maximum strength shouldn't be any more difficult than how many pieces of gear you can acquire per week. It should be fine. Now then, what if you change your mind? What if you choose it and you're regretful? What if you find out later that something is just so much better, I should go with that? What if you find out the story wasn't interesting? What if you're a more casual player and you finish that story so you want to go and change Covenant and start their story? You don't want 4 characters. You want to go back and do the rest of the story. Now, I just said Blizzard really wants you to have 4 characters. But I also just said you can go and swap. So you can do it on 1 character. Here's the thing. Recently, the rest of the campaign for this period has unlocked for one of the Covenants, the Venthyr. And that gives a really clear insight as what is potentially going to be the next raid and the next Covenant focus. What it appears to be, or the way they're handling this, is that at each stage of the Shadowlands, so we can break it up into patches of 9.1, 9.2 or whatever, a different Covenant will be the primary focus for the events unfolding in the Shadowlands. For the beginning, it's really about the Venthyr. We have the raid there, Castle Nathria. It's going to be taking you through that. And then, once Castle Nathria is completed, more of the story in the campaign will unlock, very similar to just time gating it until after the raid is cleared, on the after effects that have happened in the Shadowlands because you have dealt with Castle Nathria. That means that having 4 characters, you can move all 4 of them up at the same time. If you have 1 character, you can swap and then do the campaign for the other faction. And when swapping, you do maintain your renown that you earned with that faction. Okay, so if you say Venthyr and then you swap to do the Maldraxxus story, if you go back to Venthyr, which you can do, then you will still have the renown you earned initially. Okay, you will have to start farming your Maldraxxus rep from new. That will happen. But if you leave Maldraxxus and go back later in the expansion, you will have saved how much you earned there. Remember, there are also catch-ups and things, so really don't worry about that too much. So you can do that if you want to play the long game of seeing all the stories. Absolutely fine. But just bear in mind that you've not finished the Venthyr campaign. It's going to have more and more individualistic things added to it. So from what I can tell right now, the main focus at the start is going to be Revendreth. The next focus is likely to be Maldraxxus, based on this extra storyline that was unlocked recently for testing, which means later down the line we're likely to see a focus on Ardenweald, and then maybe Bastion in some sort of order like that. Okay, so you're going to swap. Now, swapping from one Covenant to another, a brand new one that you've not been in before, super easy, an absolute doddle. Literally a case of going to the emissary room where you originally made your choice, speak to the new one. So if you were Venthyr, if you'd chosen Revendreth, if you go there and then speak to the Bastion emissary, they'll just say, okay, and that's it. That's literally it. You're now part of Bastion. You're going to have your Revendreth abilities, and you'll just start as if you were a fresh member of Bastion. Simple as that. But what if you want to go back to the Venthyr? This is the bit that people are a little bit irked about. Well, it's relatively simple, but not particularly interesting based on what we know right now. So Blizzard doesn't want you being able to swap backwards and forwards. So they're very, very much against that. And they want at least a 2-week period based on the statements they've made between you being able to do that. They are perfectly fine with you swapping one time. So if you regret your choice, you see something better, the grass is greener over there, then you could do that very, very freely. You're just going to have to play catch up in the campaign and renown. But if you're somebody who is like, well, I want this ability for Mythic Plus, and the Venthyr give that, but I'm raiding tonight, so I'm going to swap to Bastion because that's my favoured raid ability. What they don't want you to do is like, oh, and I'm doing Mythic Plus after the raid, so I want to swap back to Venthyr then. They don't want that. We're all aware of that. So if you are in that scenario where you need to go back to a Covenant that you've already been a part of, you're going to be given a quest. They're going to tell you that you betrayed them. And now you need to re-earn favor with them. And they're going to give you Fill the Bar. They're going to give you Fill the Bar. It's really easy. They're going to ask you to do world quests and do dungeons that are relevant to that faction. So each of the Covenants does have a couple of dungeons associated with it, and you're just going to fill the bar. Killing bosses in there is going to fill the bar a little bit. Doing world quests is going to fill the bar. Now, filling the bar, not particularly difficult. You can do it over the course of a week if you want, because then it's going to tell you once you've filled the bar, come back next week. It's really, that's what they've come up with so far. This might change, and of course, if it does change, I will let you know. But you just have to fill the bar for that week. You're still not allowed to change, and then the next reset, we're not quite sure what happens then, but likely you fill the bar again. That's likely the way it's looking right now, and then maybe if they want it to be 3 weeks, you have to come back the next reset. So it's based on the weekly, the important piece of information here is it's based entirely on the weekly reset of the server. So in theory, if they only want you to fill the bar twice, and let's say you're in Europe, so we reset on a Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, you could decide to swap your Covenant Tuesday night, fill the bar very, very quickly, and then fill the bar again Wednesday morning, and you might be done. That's it. It just takes that amount of time. Unless they want it to span another couple of weeks, in which case they'll add more to it. Now, potentially they're going to make this a little bit more involved, a little bit story-based over the course of the Shadowlands. This is like the first real implementation of this system. But that's kind of the idea they're running with, is to make sure that if you're a turbo nerd, that you can't just grind it out. Or it's similar to how we could do it with Scryer and Aldor, which is we could have the materials somewhat banked to make swapping very, very quick. They're not doing that. They're having you do relatively banal, relatively simple tasks just to slow you down. They're just really implementing a system so you cannot do it quickly, rather than playing the reset game. But you're still going to have to fill the bar twice regardless, at a minimum. So that is what's happening with this swapping system. So again, to be clear on this, you choose a Covenant. If you wish to swap, you can. You can do it very quickly. It's instantaneous. You just swap over. Really, really easy. The issue comes in when you want to swap back again. That's going to just hamstring you in terms of server resets as to when that is going to happen. I am not here to tell you whether I like this system or not. I'm just explaining it to you. So that's how it's going to work, guys. I hope that helps out, because I'm seeing people think that you can swap all over the place or that everybody has some implementation of this. That's not the case. Hopefully that's cleared everything up for you guys. And we'll see you again very, very soon. Bye-bye.